Hey everyone, this is Dr. Matt with the Ethos Athletes Podcast, and today we're going to be starting our series on sleep. And for this particular series, I brought in Phoenix specialist Dr. Troy Anderson, who's the owner of Phoenix Neurology and Sleep Medicine. Phoenix Neurology and Sleep Medicine is the largest privately owned clinic in Phoenix and the largest sleep clinic in Arizona. Dr. Anderson is board certified in neurology, sleep, and bariatric medicine. So Dr. Anderson, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So what made you want to get into sleep?
You know, it's interesting. I was part of a pretty amazing experience. In 1997, a Korean Airlines Flight 801 crashed in Guam. It was a 747 jet.
Yeah. And
I was in charge of search and rescue. So I was a primary responder on it. And it was just horrific, as you can imagine. There was about 250 people on board. And we pulled out about 33 of them. But I remember one particular case, as I was going through the bodies and finding survivors, there was a little crack underneath, like a big, huge 25-foot of debris. And I crawled underneath it, and there was a lady that was hanging upside down. And she was pinned, her legs were pinned, but she was still alive. And I got to meet her, and obviously I talked to her, I tried to take care of her and try to comfort her. But I couldn't get her out. There's nothing I could do. She was pinned by just tons and tons of metal. Okay. And so I already had some people ready to go, and I heard the helicopters coming, so I had to get out and move those people. And then people started bringing me patients, and I was busy taking care of someone. I kept on trying to send somebody to go and find her, but nobody could. So finally, after maybe an hour or so, I finally found time to go and see her, and I went to go see her, and she had passed away. And it struck me because the reason why the accident happened was because the pilot didn't sleep. Okay. He basically was supposed to go home, but they made him do another shift. Okay. And so he was tired. So he didn't really, he misjudged the runway, and he made some bad errors that you would make when you're tired. Okay. And there was nothing, I battled, what could I have done to help people and save people? And there was, in her honor, there's really nothing I could do for her, but what I could do for her was be an advocate to tell people that they need their rest, because if they get their rest, they can prevent major catastrophes, as big as that and as small as forgetting to pay your water bill. You know? So it's just the gamut. And then as I studied sleep more and more, I realized how important sleep was for performance. Okay. So in the aviation, when I was in the Navy, I had to train pilots how to take power naps, because it was well documented and well studied that when you're out on mission and the vibration of a helicopter, that if you go in and teach them how to take a 20-minute nap, you can go out and perform even better. And so that connection to performance, and then as I studied it more, the connection to her health, I just fell in love with it. And it was the one area that I wanted to devote my life into, was helping people get a better sleep.
Wow, that's a great story. Now, when you were in the Navy, were you a physician at that time as well?
Yes,
or were
I was a flight surgeon.
Okay.
So, and it's still kind of open to what I wanted to do, because as a flight surgeon, you have an internship, you've got 6 months of flight training and aviation medicine, and then you're thrown out into operation medicine.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure, of course.
So one of the questions that I get asked about in my practice and when I meet people is they always ask about, well, can you explain the sleep cycle to me, or what, they want to more. I think sleep is one of those things that everyone knows is super important.
Yes.
And in this in this series we're going to delve into why that is and what it can affect and all that good stuff. But let's understand the basics of sleep. And so tell me a little bit more and help our listeners understand the sleep cycle. Sure. So what happens at each stage? What does the sleep cycle look like? And we'll start with that.
So there's 5 stages, right? One stage that we have to include and we can't forget about is wakefulness. That's a state of mind as well. So if you're keeping wakefulness as one stage, then our first stage sleep, it would be stage 1 sleep, which is the transition into sleep, drowsiness state. And then the next stage would be stage 2 sleep, which is the substrative sleep, which we have the majority of our sleep is stage 2 sleep. Stage 3 sleep is our deep sleep, and in deep sleep is where we feel the most rest.
Okay.
And then if you have, or actually, if the more stage 3 sleep you get, that's more that correlates more directly with have the feeling that you had a good night's rest. And so we call that restorative sleep.
Okay.
And then you have REM sleep, which is largely unknown, the purpose of that, but I have my own thoughts based on my own studies and my training or what that is, none of which confirmed.
Okay.
But it does have something to do with memory. So each stage is important. And so obviously wakefulness is when we make things happen. But stage 1 sleep, that transitional period is slowly turning things over from reducing sensation, so your audible hearing goes down, you obviously close your eyes, so you shut down your visual input, your sensory touch, feel, all those senses are starting to be reduced at that point in time. So that's that. Stage 2 sleep is really the substrative sleep. There's probably a lot of proteins being rebuilt and that sort of thing. But stage 3 sleep is when we feel that is a trigger, because it's if you get stage 3 sleep before midnight, it triggers a cascade of events of timing of hormonal releases throughout the night. So at 2 o'clock, cortisol is released. You have your temperature nadir, which is the lowest temperature your body has throughout the whole day, which is somewhere around 3 o'clock in the morning. And then slowly, as you start between 3 to 6 o'clock in the morning, hormonal changes occur to get you prepared for to attack your day. So thyroid, cortisol, glucose starts coming up. All those things start coming up. So finally, when you wake up, you are restored. So stage 3 sleep is key. So for a child, for example, stage 3 sleep triggers growth hormone release, even in adults. And for a child, that's that growth hormone, which is released in the evening, helps growth for somebody. So it's pretty interesting. And then the other one, my thoughts on REM is that it helps solidify memory. So, and this is just my personal thought, so none of you listeners out there, don't take this to heart. But, obviously, if I asked you, did you go on vacation last year? And you said yes. And I asked you if you rented a car, you said yes. And then I asked you if you you stayed in a hotel, you'd say yes. And if I asked you, what room number you stayed in, you wouldn't know what that is. So there's memory out there that we need immediately. It's our RAM, but we don't really need it long term. And so we need to get rid of it so we can open our space up for new memory. And REM sleep to me is sort of like that, like a computer defrag, where you're getting rid of all the fragments and consolidating things that you should know. So I consider REM, and there has been some indirect findings to show that is correlates with memory. But and that's what I consider that is. And you sort of have these weird dreams, and it's during the dream state. But what's interesting about REM sleep, it's highly interesting, because when you're in REM sleep, the brain paralyzes the body. Why? Because if you act out your dreams, you'll hurt yourself and hurt your bed partner. So you paralyzes the body, which is phenomenal. So it's a miracle. The only thing that moves is your eye. So REM sleep is called rapid eye movement. Everything. If I put a needle inside your muscle and I did a sleep test on you, as soon as you went into REM sleep, your tone would drop to nothing. And so it makes it quite interesting, because a lot of different things happen then. So sleep apnea, when you sleep apnea occurs when the muscles are relax and causes the air to close. But when you're in REM sleep, now everything's paralyzed, the collapse is at its maximum, and sleep apnea can be at its worst. Other conditions that happen in REM sleep, if your brain doesn't paralyze your body, that's called Rem Behavior Disorder. And about studies now show that 80% of patients that have this Rem Behavior Disorder go on to develop Parkinson's at some point. So it's really quite interesting. It's a degenerative process where the different stages aren't controlled well, by the suprachiasmatic nucleus. So it's just interesting, Absolutely. So each cycle is important. We need it. But the most important thing how you're going to get it is you got to make sure that you're getting your 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep at night, and making sure you're going to bed before midnight.
Now, do you go in and out of cycles throughout the night, and how long does each cycle typically last in a normal person, that's getting good sleep?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. So yeah, that's true. So you basically there's these things called ultra cycles.
Okay.
And they're 90 minutes, and we actually have them all day long.
Okay.
So the typical person, we recommend to have 5 of these ultra cycles. So 90 minutes, that puts you at 7.5 hours.
Okay.
So in those 90 minutes, you fall into stage 1, which is typically 5 to 15 minutes or so. And then you fall into stage 2, and we think of in sleep, we think of it more as a percentage. So about 50 to 60% of your night would be at stage 2.
Okay.
And then you'd have another 10 to 15% of that in deep sleep, another 10 to 15% of that in REM sleep. And that's what we consider like normal sleep architecture.
Okay.
But in general, you should fall into some sort of REM and finish that cycle by 90 minutes, and then fall through that stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 cycle again.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you did say that. So one of the questions I wanted to ask is one stage more restorative than the other, and that sounded like it's stage 3. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you said that you need about 5 cycles in order to hit that 7.5, or to hit 7.5 hours, which is when they say you need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. That's the reason, right?
That's
there.
the reason, but it changes, right?
Yeah.
So one thing that probably we should mention right here is, as we're talking about the physiology of sleep, is that as we age, it's different. So as a newborn needs maybe 12, well, and, some of them need 16, 18 hours, but as a month passes on, you need less, like 12 hours. As the eyes start to developing and they start seeing visual cues and light, by the 3rd month, most infants would be on the night-day cycle.
Okay.
By 3 months, but they need a lot more sleep. And then as they get older, they need less sleep. So let's say toddlers, 9 hours or so. And then even all the way through elementary school, they would need 9 to 10 hours. And then once you start hitting like maybe past that, like 10, 12, you start getting less, like 8 to 9. But what's interesting about it is that when you get into your teenage years, you start going to bed later and waking up later, and that's natural physiology.
Okay.
It's actually unnatural for us to wake up our kids at 6 a.m., especially in the teenage years, and get them to school at 7. It's better if they're going to school around 10.
Okay.
And getting off at 5 or 6. So you see this movement now.
Huh.
We've been pushing the education system for years, and finally we're seeing some traction where at least the seniors in high school are allowed to go to school 10, 11 and get off later. So yeah, it's really quite nice. That's natural. And then as we hit our mid-20s, we get into the productive years, and then you're going back to the 10 to 6, typical 7.5, 8 hours. And that lasts for a long time. And then when you get past 65, you start needing less sleep, like on the order of 5.5 to 6.5 hours. And then by the time you start showing some evidence of Alzheimer's, that sort of thing, it starts getting defragmented again, like you're a child, sort of defragmented sleep. So it's really quite interesting. So it's like not one fits everyone. We have short sleepers that require 5.5. I only need like maybe 6.5 hours. My wife needs 8.5 to 9 hours. So I go to bed later and she does, and I get up at the same time. But, so the bottom line is that if you are sleeping 4.5 to 5.5 hours, and you can go about the rest of your day and not feel tired, not feel fatigued, not feeling like you're missing out on something, then you are normal. For you.
Interesting.
Whereas, so you could get 7.5 hours and be tired and wiped out all day, but you might be somebody that needs 9 hours of sleep. So everybody's different.
So even, I know you did a great job at breaking everything up by age, but even if you went and had, like if you had 10 people or even less, 5 people that are all the same age, they can all vary depending on their unique.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as for yourself, the biggest key is if you're tired and fatigued and missing out on life. If you have a sleep issue.
Yeah.
But as physicians, if you're a physician or a caretaker out there and listening to it, the one key doesn't fit all.
Right.
And so you really need to ask what their function is. Are you tired in the day? Are you like missing out? Everybody's doing stuff and playing like bag toss, and you're on the sleep because you're too tired. Well, that's an issue. That's a problem.
So we talked about the sleep cycle. Now, what about what is it in our body, or what are the different factors that tell us to go to sleep? Like, again, normal person. Yeah.
Well, that's really complicated.
For
for this discussion. But I think that There's a lot of neurotransmitters, like gabapentin's a big one, acetylcholine's a big one. But what's interesting about it is, like, for example, gabapentin, there might be a buildup of gabapentin until it gets to a critical tipping point threshold. And once it gets past it induces that if you close your eyes, it favors sleep. And then as you sleep, that reduces, and then there might be acetylcholine or something like that, one of these excitatory transmitters that would increase to the point where now it is stimulating you that it favors wakefulness. And then when you get into your dream sleep, that's a completion of a sleep cycle. That is when you're most sensitive to wake up. In fact, if you wake up halfway in between, you may not feel restored. So, if you wake up, like, let's say in the middle of that 90 minutes, at the 40-minute mark, you may not feel restored. It might be better for you to finish the 90-minute cycle. In fact, when I teach people how to do power naps, the reason why we want them to wake up 20 minutes or less is because we don't want them to get into a full 90-minute cycle. Because if they do, and they wake up at 40, 50 minutes, they're going to wake up groggy and tired. The same thing with sleep drunkenness. If you get an extra cycle of sleep, more than you need, if you're a 7.5-hour sleeper, and then you get 9.5, 10-hour sleep, you might get something called sleep drunkenness, where you feel kind of like wiped out and fatigued all day.
And you said that's from waking up before the cycle's
So two ways you can do it. One way is waking up before the cycle is completed. The other way is oversleeping. You only need 7.5 hours of sleep. And you're getting 9.5. And it's a common mistake. Patients will be up all day and they feel like, okay, I need to sleep the next day all day. But that's not really true. You just need it's 7.5 hours to be restored. It's like as soon as your batteries could be out in your phone for 5 days. Once you plug it in, it only needs to be plugged in for a few hours to be charged. It doesn't need to be plugged in 5 days later to charge it up. Just, one charge does it.
So how would someone be able to tell the difference, or is there a way to tell the difference between I overslept or I woke up in the middle of the cycle?
Yeah, and just knowing your body, knowing it, it's like, trial and error. One of the best things that I always ask my patients is, how are you on weekends or how are you on vacation? Because work is kind of like, it's not really a good indicator. But naturally, if you have nothing to wake you up, what time would you wake up?
Right? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And then, most people kind of wake up. Most people that oversleep, what'll happen is, that maybe sleep too much to the sleep drunkenness state, is they'll sort of wake up and maybe get up, use the bathroom, do something, and then they go back to bed. And then that's kind of when you oversleep and then can get the sleep drunkenness. Yeah.
So we understand a very basic understanding of the basics. What are some of the benefits of sleep?
The benefits of sleep are huge. So first of all, studies have shown that if you lack sleep, you increase your risk for Alzheimer's disease. So there's a lot of things that happen in sleep that restores the brain, and this is sort of my, me deducing from all the research and studying that I've done. This is what I teach my patients, and there's a lot of indirect studies to support this. But, when you're sleeping at night, that's when the brain has a chance to recover. And so one of the things it does at night is it makes and develops neurotransmitters. And in the day, we use those neurotransmitters, and they break out to their byproduct. Nighttime is when we take those byproducts and recycle them to remake neurotransmitters. Well, if you have, if you go throughout the day and you keep building up these byproducts, that's trash, and so that trash can build up in a cell and kill it. So that's, so memory is huge, and so having your neurons working effectively, communicating effectively with other neurons, you'll have this brain dysfunction, which will cause problems with tiredness, memory, cognitive abilities, and being optimal. That's why I said it's so important in performance. There are really good studies to show that lack of sleep increases accidents. Motor vehicle accidents is the one that everyone's interested in, but all kinds of accidents. It doesn't, but they studied it. It doesn't change your ability to make decisions, which is interesting. Because from a physician standpoint, you can still make the right decision if with lack of sleep, but it does impair your visual spatial coordination and those sorts of things. So, they've also shown that sleep slows down your efficiency. So if you are well rested, you can do 3 to up to 9 times more work with less time than somebody who isn't well rested. So instead of you staying up all night and spending from like 11 o'clock to 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning trying to do a project, you could probably do that same 4-hour project if you wake up early in the morning from like 5 o'clock to 6. You can probably complete the whole thing in an hour.
Okay.
But at nighttime, you're it's just you're not as efficient. So it helps the efficiency, it helps performance, it helps memory.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a whole lot of benefits to it. Not to mention how a lot of studies have shown that it affects your cardiovascular system if you lack sleep. They've done a study, an old study, and they took college kids, and what they did was they told one set of college kids that you guys, once you have 7.5 hours, they had food available, they had exercise equipment available, they had all kinds of different foods. And then the other group, you only gave them 4 hours of sleep, same access to everything. And what they found was after the end of 2 months, the group that slept well were real diligent, they exercised, they ate healthy foods, they got healthy.
Mm-hmm.
The group that only slept 4 hours tend to eat French fries and bad foods for you, didn't exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, their blood pressures were higher, their glucose was higher, their cholesterol was higher,
Okay.
and they were more apt for syndrome X than the group that slept well. That was the only difference between the two.
Okay.
So it's very
Interesting,
important, yeah.
Okay. Now, so there's many benefits to it. What are some of what are the top 3 things that you see affected by sleep in your experience or in your practice?
Yeah, so the probably work performance would be one that I see is that a lot of patients complain that, or they come to me finally when it's starting to affect their job ability. So that's one. And then also missing out on the experiences in their home, and they just feeling like, I get a lot of complaints from their family members saying that, like they're not, their wife or their spouse or their husband is asleep all afternoon and they're completely missing each other. So those are some of the things that I see a lot. And then perform at school, a lot of kids, if they can't sleep at night, it affects their academic, but mostly performance and engagement in with family members, activities and stuff, and social gatherings. Okay.
Now, you said, though, for like work and school performance, going back to what one of the studies you had mentioned, their ability to make decisions isn't affected, but it's more like, is work performance
efficiency?
Efficiency? Okay.
Yeah, efficiency. Like, you can do a lot more in less time.
Okay.
It's yeah.
Okay. And then someone who has that a physical job where they need that visual and spatial coordination, that's obviously going to be super important for them.
Yeah, memory and cognitive abilities. So, so if you have to be able to apply yourself.
Okay.
And have memory and not to mention something that we really don't need a study for, but I'm sure there's one. But if you don't get sleep, you're cranky.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And in any job, if you're cranky, you're not going to get along with your coworkers or your clients. So
that could definitely
affect your work.
For sure, absolutely. So then what's the definition, or what would you say is a good definition of quality sleep?
So quality sleep to me is sleep that is functional.
Okay.
In other words, somebody is able to live life to the fullest, engage in it, feel like they're sharp mentally, focused, they can apply themselves, make good decisions, and they can engage in activities throughout the day, and sleep does not control them.
Okay.
And tiredness does not control them. So that's a high quality sleep, because it's different in everybody.
Yeah.
It is, but somebody can say, like, I had 6 hours, but it completely restores them. Somebody can say that they've had 8 or 9 hours and they're still tired throughout the day, which means they're having low quality sleep. And that's all dependent on daytime sleepiness. So I think that's the first clue that you're not having that you're having an issue, is if you're tired in the daytime.
Okay. Perfect. Is there anything else that our listeners should, or that you like, anything else you'd like to explain to our listeners to help them understand sleep, or any other key points?
Well, there is a really key point I want to maybe end with this, and
Please.
that's we think it's interesting, when you break down what we need for survival. Probably the most important element that we need for survival is air. If we don't get it, we die in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. The second most important element we need for survival is water. If we don't get it, we'll die in 3 to 5 days. And then if I ask people, this is where I think the big mistake and the big, I think it's a big mistake that society is understands, and they think that food is probably the next more important, because without food you'll die in 30 days. But what's interesting is they did a study that showed that in fact sleep is more important than food.
Okay.
People don't think of it that way. They did this study on rats, and they discovered that they can go 30, 40 days without food, but they can only go 12 days without sleep, and the death that they have is horrible.
Yeah, I bet.
So within the first day or two, they're like moody, they're biting each other, they're fighting, and then they start hallucinating. The third, fourth day, they started getting stressed.
Okay.
The fifth day, hair starts falling out. They started having fevers and infections. 7th, 8th, 9th day, and then by the 12th day, they're dead. So it's a miserable, horrible death without sleep. And so, and I think that the take-home message is that sleep is often taken for granted, but we shouldn't. We should be diligent. And so things like penetrate our ability to sleep. We allow computers and Netflix and our phone and Facebook and social media and all that stuff and work and like things that are going on across the world infiltrate our time when we should be sleeping. You know? And I always tell my patients, after 7 o'clock at night, you need to start transitioning to sleep, so you're in bed by 9:30 or 10. So after 7 o'clock, you reach the end of your day. You reach the line, the finish line. Now it's time for you to like enjoy your family, have dinner, things like that.
Okay.
And then I'd rather have my patients do that and then wake up early, and then be up all night.
Right.
And people allow anxiety, so anxiety causes insomnia and stuff. They allow that stuff to just be part of them 24/7, and they don't know how to like cut it out or compartmentalize that stuff out of it. So I would say my take-home message is sleep is important. Don't take it for granted. It's more important than food. Just like you need to go shopping and prepare to eat, you need to do everything you can to prepare to sleep.
Yeah, I love that comparison. So no, that's great. So we're going to go ahead and finish up this podcast on understanding sleep and the basics of sleep. So just to summarize a few things that Dr. Anderson said, sleep exists, or the sleep cycle exists with 5 different stages. There's wakefulness, and then stage 1 is drowsiness. Stage 2 is what you call sleep substrate.
Sleep,
and then stage 3 is your deep sleep, and stage 4 is your REM. And each have their own importances, or each are important in their own reason, and you can go back and listen to that for those particular reasons. One sleep cycle lasts about 90 minutes, and the reason that we say you need 7 to 8 hours of sleep on average is that you want ideally 5 90-minute cycles, which comes out to 7.5 hours. So one thing to keep in mind is as you age, even regardless of you age, everyone's a little different, and so some people can last on 4.5 to 5 hours of sleep, whereas others might need closer to 9-10 hours of sleep. So one way to figure that out is to ask yourself, how are you on vacation or on the weekends? When do you typically wake up? And just kind of follow your cycles throughout that, and that'll give you an idea of roughly an idea of the amount of cycles that you need. Benefits of sleep include brain recovery, increased efficiency, better cardiovascular health, and then some of the things that Dr. Anderson mentioned that he sees in his practice with people who lack sleep is a decrease in work performance and school performance because they're not as efficient as they would be with sleep. And then probably one of the more important ones is missing out on experiences with their family and friends. Definition of quality sleep is being able is what he called functional sleep, where you can live in your life and enjoy it without missing out on anything. He ranks sleep as number 3 on what you need in order to survive, following air and water, and studies have shown that sleep is more important than food. So I think we threw a lot of information at you, just starting with the basics. Our very next episode is going to be common reasons why people lose sleep, and Dr. Anderson's going to give us a few ways on how to fix those for self-care. So Dr. Anderson, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And he'll be back next week with our next episode. So hope you enjoyed this one, and thanks for listening.